Bitcoin and for blockchain. So here to continue that conversation again is Eddie van der Valt of Bloomberg and his esteemed panel. Please welcome our final panelists to this show.
Hi. Everybody, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you guys missed me. I was only on for about 2 minutes. Yeah, well, we've got a really interesting session today. I think this is really at the heart of what, this whole conference is about. It's about whether or not, Malta will succeed in this goal to become the next Silicon Valley. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that just yet, but there's something we're going to discuss. But first of all, I'm going to go down the line and just give you each an opportunity to just briefly say 2 words or so about yourself. Stephen, you first, CEO of Moneta Pro. Do you want to tell us what you do?
Yeah, we run a global corporate incubator out of Beverly Hills. Started 11 companies, taken 3 public. The current one, Moneta Pro, is a $17 trillion market of corporate barter. We built a closed-loop payment system, and we've won 7 global corporate ICO contests.
Okay, and for the purposes of the discussion, where are you based?
Beverly Hills, but all the new stuff is coming out from Malta.
Okay. Ken, you're the co-founder of Crypto Explorers. Tell us a bit.
So Crypto Explorers is, you might have read about us or heard about us, we've been covered on some blogs, cryptoexplorers.org. We organize events in crypto hotspots around the world, starting in Crypto Valley, Switzerland, Zug and Zurich, and I've also organized events in other hotspots, so I'm going to talk to that. And I'm an American entrepreneur who lived here in Malta a few years ago, so I'm going to talk about Malta too, and now I live in Berlin.
Tugce and yourself, you're the co-founder of Angel Labs. You told me a bit about yourself last night, but do you want to go ahead and just tell us what you do?
Sure. I'm one of the founding partners of Angel Labs. It is a global investment platform with 2 offices in San Francisco and Paris.
Okay.
But we do have a presence in 44 countries, representing 6,000 investors and making investment decisions on their behalf.
And you spend a lot of time coming over here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Patryk, yourself, you're Chief Business Developer of BitBay. Your interests?
Yes, sir. I'm also VP of BitBay. We have 100,000 merchants and customers across Europe, and we are fiat exchange.
Okay. Enzo, Managing Partner of Transform Group, joining us last minute. Thank you very much for standing in. Tell us.
We are the actual #1 actual PR firm in the world in this space. We've done 105 ICOs. We launched Ethereum, Dash, Neo, NAMS to actually name a few. We are now moving into a strategies business also. I'm actually from a NASDAQ MD in strategy. I started NASDAQ Corporate Solutions, and that's how I met Michael. And basically what we're looking to do is to help to build out the infrastructure for the STO marketplace and the ICO marketplace. And one of the biggest issues is the ICOs will come to us and not know which actual kind of jurisdiction to choose from. So we are out there actively learning about each of them. We're not lawyers, but we actually will help them try to navigate the best possible place for them to actively engage in business. So banks is a big issue also. So yeah, so
that's exactly the what is that issue here, right? We've got. I mean, I asked somebody yesterday, what he thinks about Malta as an investment, a place to host his investments, and he showed me the view, and he was like, well, you can get worse than that. But it's not the only game in town. There are a lot of similar jurisdictions out there that have similar advantages. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So let's see, we chose for crypto explorers, this was last summer when crypto was erupting and everything was going crazy. It still is going crazy, but that's a whole other story. We chose Crypto Valley specifically because of its infrastructure, the people there, and the support communities, and the successes, and a number of other factors. However, what I noticed quickly by the time we did 2 or 3 of these events, a few months had passed by, I noticed that people had been coming from all over the world, places like Israel and Turkey and places around the world, to set up shop in Switzerland, and went away disappointed because there was a number of aspects that were just not competitive. So there is absolutely huge opportunities for other jurisdictions. I will be living for this winter in Singapore, by the way, because that's another really interesting place, but that also has its ups and downs, and Malta has a huge opportunity, and I'm sure we'll get more into the pros and cons of actually putting your business here. Wait, one more thing I want to say really quickly. One thing, Dr. Kadlec, wherever you are and your staff or whatever, I have never been to a conference. This is going completely on time. The Swiss can't do that. We started exactly at 5 o'clock.
So this is something Malta has on the Swiss. They're better at keeping time.
So far, so good. Blockchain companies come here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I love about Ken, is his enthusiasm. Stephen, Malta has opportunities, it has winning advantages, right? What are the things that happen what make you bring your business here?
When we were looking at it, we were looking at a totality of things. And Malta has what I've created, we call it the 5 pillars. So pillar 1, we were looking at regulation, jurisdiction. Malta already has a history because of gambling and gaming. They've got some jurisdictional legacy of trying to do creative things. Liechtenstein, these other jurisdictions hadn't come online yet. Second, we looked at corporate tax. Malta's advantage is 35%, 30% rebate, or a 5% corporate tax structure, which we can't get in the US. We can get 0 in Singapore. We looked at the third for banking, where crypto banking's coming online. Then we looked at technology, attorneys, it's all English speaking. So all of our contracts, our documents, technology, we can hire people here that we can't hire in the Cayman Islands or BVI or all these other jurisdictions we were looking at. And then they have a residency program that kind of completes the circle, where a lot of our friends, I don't know about yours, a lot of our friends are running down to Puerto Rico, and I'm not one that wants to count the number of days on an island with no electricity. It's just not something for me. So Malta was a global conceptual thing, saying we can have a company here, we have tax, we have jurisdiction, a friendly framework, the government is very approachable, they're willing to partner with you and pilot. If you roll a pilot out in Malta, you've got access to the EU. There's structural advantages that no other jurisdiction has. And we looked at Singapore and Liechtenstein, and it just doesn't compete.
Patrick, I'm coming across to you. I mean, it doesn't hurt that it's in the European Union, right? That's got to be. I was speaking to people here yesterday. I never made a connection, but they said, look, we looked at Gibraltar, but they've got Brexit coming, and we want to be in the European Union. It does matter. Right.
It does matter, because we were previously in Poland, so which also is a European country, but the communication with the government over there is not existing. When we came over to Malta, totally different approach. They really want to create something on a global scale. So this is one of the things. We also we are looking for other jurisdictions, but for now, it's Malta is really the best place for us.
And judging from you, are there any limiting factors? Because it's not all good news. There are challenges here in Malta, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think when it comes to the jurisdiction, the legislation, regulations is all great. But I think my only concern for the future of the blockchain space in Malta would be first the attraction of talent, and then the retention of talent, because you don't want to have Malta become like one of those countries where you would go set up a shell entity just to take advantage of the jurisdiction, but you don't contribute much in terms of talent to the ecosystem. So I think The solution is also twofolded. I think there could be some regulations that implement minimum criteria for employment for local talent.
Yeah.
And also bringing, of course, outside talent to work in the space, but also building a really inclusive ecosystem, which means building a strong venture capital ecosystem, having a strong investor network, having a strong network of mentors. So building the ecosystem will be key. Making sure that developers are here.
Yeah, Enzo, there's a bigger question that we need to ask, right? The question was set up whether this is the next Silicon Valley. But the question is really, is Silicon Valley the right model? Is it Singapore that we're looking for? What is
so, you know, that's the old model where you have to have, the VC have to be in the actual driving distance of getting to the CEO and choking them when they weren't doing their job. We live in a global economy now, and where you domicile may not be where you live. Where you domicile might be based on really what you need in the actual jurisdiction for your specific project. We know most of the firms that we've worked with, some top, very, very large electric token holders, they do it based on who's flexible and who's going to be smart. See, the thing about Malta is the people here have really studied blockchain and how it is structured, and cryptocurrency versus token versus this, where they think some of the other ones are just doing like a land grab.
Right.
And that's what I see here. I think that they're very kind of sophisticated in understanding blockchain, which is really important.
Ken, I know you guys jump in on this too. I mean, is it Silicon Valley the right model?
You know I'm chomping at the bit to jump on this. So there are a few different things. I mean, let me just make that statement. I think, is it the next Silicon Valley? I dare to say, I think it's the state. I think the question is asked the wrong way.
Right.
Malta has a lot going for it. A lot of things it has specifically because it's not a Silicon Valley.
Right.
Because it's an island, because it's agile. You know, I lived in Slima a few years ago, and Villani is just across the way. It's a tiny place. It's easy to get to know everybody. You don't want to be a Silicon Valley. You want to be a major player. You want to be an impactful player that punches above its weight in a world ecosystem and makes all that work. Oh, and one more thought that I wanted to say that Tugce said before is it's also really important, people may not think about this, is the visa policy. So what is the immigration policy and the visa policy? I'll tell you, Switzerland, that, if you were to name the ingredients of the reasons that the people I mentioned before, the ones who went to Switzerland and left, it's because they show up and it turns out you can't get visas for everything.
Yeah.
Switzerland is a hardcore, we want to stay small, we don't want to expand, we don't care about getting richer than we are. And I'm not actually familiar with how, I know it's easier in Malta, so the question is, that might be an advantage to Malta.
Well, the good thing, but carry on. The one good thing is that Malta is part of the EU. All of these offshore actual jurisdictions, they're offshore.
Right.
And there's always these there's tax hunting and all this other stuff. Well, Malta is in the EU, and I know that there's that kind of could stifle them a little bit, but if they act nimble enough, they can really take a really leadership type of role.
Yeah, Stephen, I can throw this. Oh, sorry, please do.
Sorry about that. So I think Malta is going to set up its own example.
Right.
The way there's no other Silicon Valley, there's no other Dubai, there's no other Singapore, there's no other Mauritius. When you look at the local ecosystem of Mauritius, I think it's one of the best places to set up your financial services activities.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
and they're actually building quite the fintech hub out there.
Right.
And I think one of the strengths of Malta is going to come from finding the intersection of its core industries. So gaming was one, real estate is one, now blockchain is one. So think about the intersection of those. And yesterday, at the opening event, there was the announcement of this new real estate tech fund that Frank Salt is launching. So I think it's a key initiative, building a real estate tech fund that will invest in blockchain companies that are at the intersection of those two key areas.
Yeah, and Stephen, that's exactly right. Tugce nailed it on the head. What the model for blockchain island is going to look like is not what the model for for Silicon Valley was, and you don't want it that way.
Well, my argument's been, and I was here months ago with Tim on a panel, And somebody asked him, oh, how can Malta be like Silicon Valley? And he said, you can't. We being Silicon Valley are the center of innovation.
Right.
And I thought that was such a smug comment because my argument's been Silicon Valley's not the center of innovation, they're the center of capital.
Well, exactly.
Like many people, we've had to go beg for money in Silicon Valley for years. So these innovators from around the world had to come to Silicon Valley. That was the bastion of capital.
Yeah.
That cycle's been broken. You can innovate anywhere in the world.
Right.
If that company can get funded, that company can grow and
Just what we've seen in
expand.
ICOs has been fantastic,
Yeah.
right?
And so our argument is even broader. I don't think Malta should be blockchain island. We think it should be innovation island. And you can innovate, you can capitalize, and then you can grow and expand. And Silicon Valley model's done. It's broken. You don't have to move there and beg for money anymore. I, for one, I don't know about you guys, I'm thankful and grateful for that.
Right, Patrick, you agree? We don't have to. We don't have to go to a central hub, and this is where the money sits. We can do it any way.
Yeah, you know, with ICOs and SEOs, you don't have to be centered in one place, yeah? So
Right.
you have a global coverage of fundraising, yeah? So
Okay.
it's about how the
Okay.
government is treating those ICOs, yeah? But you can have investors from all over the world, yeah? This is the essential for my
And I think the original question, and this is where Ken and I talked, is if you're looking at Malta, Silicon Valley from a cultural standpoint, there's no comparison and there shouldn't be. This is an amazing island. It's a different culture than you would ever get in Silicon Valley, not right or wrong. They are just fundamentally different. If you're saying, can Malta create unicorns and successful companies and
Right.
generational companies, Malta's got an amazing opportunity. I don't think they should compete on a cultural battle, but if you want to compete on can an island of innovation build companies that could span and dominate and control and in a global capacity, the answer is yes.
In order to achieve that, Tugce, what is it that you want to see, from the rest of this year? When we get together next year, what is it that you would have want to see? What are the priorities for the rest of 2018, in other words?
For us at Angel Labs, or
For Angel Labs, but also, but for the crypto
okay, so I'm going to mix
Malta.
those two issues. But
Sorry.
first, I want to add something on what Steven said. It's very true when it comes to like Silicon Valley. It was mostly venture capital funds and the capital that created it.
Right.
And I'm sure you've been following the news about people leaving San Francisco, people
Right.
leaving Silicon Valley. And that's because now you have so many other hubs with strong venture capital ecosystems where you get the funding. And if you can find the same funding resources, then your reasons to stay in San Francisco, they're not as strong as they used to be ages
Right.
ago. So like 10 years ago, 20 years
Yeah.
ago. So when it comes to your question, so for 2018 or 2019 for next year, I'm going to talk about our plans for Malta. So we're just, I think we're going to be announcing a few more projects.
Right.
And we're going to be working with more Maltese family offices. We're thinking about potentially, depending on the workload we get, opening an office in Malta.
Okay.
And acting as a gateway between Silicon Valley and Malta.
Right. Well, that's really interesting. I want to throw this open to the floor because I don't want to lay it all at one person's door. But I want to ask you. Look, Malta there are significant challenges here. We've had the European Union come out and say, look, we need money laundering to be sorted and so on. I've had some feedback from the government saying that this is a priority for them, but it's not a place without problems, right?
Well, you know what though, so the fact is that money laundering, so blockchain can actually solve
Money laundering is
the
everything.
money laundering problem.
Right.
That's what kills me, is that blockchain is a great solution to solve that problem. You
Okay.
can track everything. That's one. Two, the banks have to get on board, or custody kind of institutions have to get on board. Either they invent new banks or the banks do it. And I have a software company that works with like Kingdom Trust and Prime Trust. These are somewhat new trust banks, right?
Yeah.
They have to figure out how to hold crypto,
Right.
and they have to be able to do it, because no hedge fund, no actual venture fund of size is going to put $100 million on their iPhone wallet.
No.
It's just not going to happen. So that's the biggest, that is the biggest challenge, I think, for this, is the banking piece and custody.
Right.
And the states, in the states, FINRA and the SEC were clearly saying that if you want the security token market to exist, we need to have custody banks, period.
Yeah, so to add a little bit of color to that, I totally agree. And you know, when I was living here, so I was here from 2014 to 15. My daughter was born here in St. James Hospital, by the way. Love being here for that year. But anyway, so what I observed is that there's definitely a flip side. This is an actual European country. It's this teeny tiny place, but you guys have coins with the Maltese cross on the others. It's a real, you know, place, and that gives stability and a feeling that you're not just this little galleon pirate ship like some other jurisdictions are perceived, especially in the Caribbean. On the other hand, you are absolutely subject to the pressure of Belgium and Berlin and all that kind of stuff, and that definitely happens. So the visa, the immigration stuff here can be, you used to be able to buy passports here in Malta, and you just can't do that anymore, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So this morning, there was a news item in the Times of Malta that talked about the EU actually sent a letter warning Malta to get on board with the AML stuff. That's a big news item, and you have to pay attention to it, and if that goes sideways, goodbye future for us.
Yeah,
That's
Patryk, but this is reputational to a large extent, right? As I was saying, this happens everywhere. I come from a background in the gold market. It is no secret the gold market has big problems with it, but the perception is there that blockchain is somehow dirty. How does a jurisdiction like that go towards changing it?
It's in exchange with all the words, like 2 years ago, there was no such a thing like AML KYC,
Right.
And right now we are we are forcing ourselves to have all this regulatory things. We are more efficient with the banks,
Right.
So it's all over there, in the blockchain space.
Shay, but we were talking earlier, and you said to me, I mean, I'm surprised by just the energy that's been in the conference so far. I've spoken to people who's been in the, I'm not going to name names, but the people who've been in the blockchain industry for a long time, early investors that say they didn't expect this big of a turnout. I saw the line yesterday. But what is it about, where does this drive in Malta come from?
Malta is a very interesting culture. I mean, out of all the places I lived in, traveled to, it's definitely unique. And I think there's a very strong human component to it, first of all.
Right.
Given their history, when you look at everything that Malta has been through, there's this very deep-rooted adaptability. So that's very easy for the Maltese. They have very strong connections to different cultures.
Okay.
It's a multilingual culture, and I think Malta really knew how to use its small size to its advantage.
Right.
So you have all these elements, and then when you look at the macroeconomic conditions, it's one of the lowest unemployment rates in Europe. So
Yes.
one of the best places for the work-life balance. So when you combine them all, it's actually one of the best
Stephen,
places to be.
We looked at it different. Go ahead.
No, you wanted to say.
Well, we looked at it a little differently. I like complex views of things. We live in a world what we started calling blockchain babble. My friend John Sutton's running around here somewhere. Blockchain babble and blockchain baffle. So many of the conferences were just being done to be conferences. There wasn't a defined agenda. And Delta Summit to us was sort of blockchain 2.0 in the conferences. It's one of the first in the world that the government actually participated. The agency booths are out there. The government's accessible. It was more business focused. So the world needs to start evolving in blockchain and crypto, and there's so much conference overload. For us, the island's great and amazing. I can fly anywhere in the world I want to go. This was about, is the industry maturing, and is this conference going to help move that maturity along? And they've done an amazing and fantastic job. For their first year, the events they have, the sponsors and stuff has really been amazing. And that's what I think the industry needs is the maturity and the next evolution of conferences where at some point we actually have to do something as a business. It's not a global conference series. You have to build a company and make money. And this, I think, is one of the first steps to help move that along.
Well, look, there's clearly hunger here. There's clearly an appetite to grow. But Ken, what are the things that you do, the next steps in Malta when we get together next year? I mean, what is it that you would have wanted to see by then, apart from a vastly bigger conference center?
It's a great question. I hadn't thought about that before, but you know what? I have an immediate answer to it, and I think part of it is. The word is marketing, but I don't mean marketing like advertising and buying AdWords or things like that. I mean, to the extent, one thing I've observed, when I went to Switzerland the first time last August for the purposes of crypto, I've been to the country many times. People ask me, it'll be interesting, Ken, tell me what you see there. Is it going to be like Bahamas or BVI? Where you go and it's a cave-in where you just see a bunch of nameplates and brass doors, but there's no one actually there.
Right.
And the answer is, Zoom, it's kind of a mix. You do have some of those brass things, no one's actually there, but you really do have people there. You really, if you go to cafes and restaurants, and not many of them, but people are talking about sharding and they're talking about deep things in crypto and that kind of thing. So Malta, I will tell you right now, I have definitely the most important indicator, the only thing that matters actually in the end, are actual people with success and track records moving here.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing it happen.
Yeah.
A successful person like you, you're here, Tugce is here. Definitely on my Facebook feed, I'm seeing people who are very wealthy, packed up my bags, I left New York, San Francisco, Austin, and I'm headed straight to Malta.
Right.
So that's happening, and so far so good. People are generally pretty happy here. I've heard some complaints, but pretty much people are here. We need that to happen more. People continue to be happy.
Yeah.
They tell their friends, and so on and so on. That's
Enzo, but you were...
So you know what though? I'll say this at this conference, and there's 2 to 3 blockchain conferences a day now. All over the world. You can live your life on the blockchain conferences. So, but here, when I got here, I was like, wow. I saw CZ at the booth. I saw most of the guys who are running exchanges. The CEO is at the booth. I'm like, this is really impressive. This is top leadership coming together. And I think that was the actual difference, Stephen, right? Is that this is like a real business conference versus more of these eclectic conferences that were out there.
But one thing that you touched on when we were speaking before is that in Malta, one thing that will have to be solved for crypto in general, but particularly if you want to be the premier jurisdiction, is access to banking and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that'll come. And I met folks here who are locating in Malta, or they're going to open up their firm here too, and they're going to work with the banks. And look, somebody has to do it first. So why not be Malta?
The biggest challenge on the banking side is they couldn't figure out how to make money.
Right.
If you have fiat deposits, the banking structure allows you to loan those out.
Right.
Crypto, you can't loan crypto out.
No.
So the monetary way the banks thought about it was broken. And what we finally have some of them looking at is just charging custodial fees for deposits. If I can move our crypto off of thumb ledgers in multiple houses that people don't know we own, so we don't get robbed when we're out of town, I want to move my money in a bank. I'll pay a custodial fee, let them store it, convert it to fiat when I need it, do my payments. I'll do loans and lines of credit and be able to write checks against asset deposits of moving crypto around there. Like the banking infrastructure isn't that difficult to solve, but somebody has to be willing to solve it.
Right.
And this seems to be a country and a jurisdiction that not only we think is willing to solve it, what we found interesting is they pass the laws first and standardize the terminology. Now that terminology is going to be standardized into the banking and taxes. The U.S., that will never happen. The industries compete, the agencies compete, there's no standardized terminology. We're a disaster. The U.S. is a mess and always will be. This country's got a unique opportunity to have a thread of consistency across all the industries.
Patryk, I'm going to roll it back a little bit because we've got very little time left. What is it that you would like to see a year from now when we come back?
The thing that I see that you mentioned, you have people all over the world, so we can create things that that have been before, yeah. Sure. So CEOs of the companies, technical guys, developers, so we can combine it in one space and create something extra.
Yeah. Look, it's just such a big topic. We could probably go on about this for another half an hour, and if anybody wants to join us for a drink afterwards, I think we could bore them to tears with more of it. But thank you very much for joining me, everybody. Thank you for today.
Thank you. Our final panel discussion.